Eroticism by George Bataille, Foreword and Introduction. Is there a way to transcend our human condition, to surpass our mundane life experience? In Eroticism, published in 1957, George Bataille draws a link between the erotic experience and the mystical one through their connection to reproduction, love, and death. In this essay, I examine the foreword and introduction chapters to the book. I also plan to write a follow-up essay on a later chapter and its conclusion later. But for now, let us begin with some provocative words from Bataille. The saint turns from the voluptuary in alarm. She does not know that his unacknowledgeable passions and her own are really one. The cohesion of the human spirit, whose potentialities range from the ascetic to the voluptuous, may nevertheless be sought, he writes. Though we can understand this as how a person has urges and impulses that at times direct them towards pleasure and at times away from it, Bataille is making a bigger claim. He claims that eroticism and mysticism spring from the same impulse, though we do not realize this because taboos surrounding eroticism cause people to be afraid of their erotic urges and hence shy away from drawing the connection between the sexual and the religious. Bataille, however, is no ordinary thinker. He is the father of transgression as a philosophical concept. He is going to bridge the sacred and the profane. To overcome our fears, we first need to understand them. Bataille believes that we fear eroticism because we misunderstand our own human nature, and hence he seeks to uncover the nature of eroticism. If all Bataille was doing was examining sex as a biological concept, then the prescriptions of science would have sufficed. However, eroticism is not just sex. Hence, to analyze eroticism, science is not enough. The human condition, shaped by sociological and anthropological factors, needs to be considered, specifically the history of religions. He believes that flights of Christian religious experience and bursts of erotic impulses are part and parcel of the same movement. By studying eroticism, Bataille is searching for a standpoint that brings out the fundamental unity of the human spirit. We are one unified person with both saintly and sensual aspects. A common approach to examining human nature is to consider it independently of our passions, but Bataille asserts the opposite must be done in order to properly understand it. He proclaims, we must never imagine existence except in terms of these passions. Eroticism is one of these passions, and a powerful one at that. What is eroticism? Eroticism is a special form unique to the human species within sex. Bataille writes, sexual reproductive activity is common to sexual animals and men, but only men appear to have turned their sexual activity into erotic activity. Eroticism, unlike simple sexual activity, is a psychological quest independent of the natural goal, reproduction and the desire for children. Animals have sex, but sex in human beings has an added dimension of the erotic layered on top of it. Sex in animals is directed towards reproduction, while sex in human beings need not necessarily be directed towards reproduction but can be undertaken for pleasure or other purposes. Those purposes are in the realm of the erotic. According to Bataille, eroticism is assenting to life up to the point of death. Although erotic activity is an exuberance of life, death is not foreign to it, paradoxical as that may seem. While the erotic is independent of reproduction, reproduction is key to understanding eroticism. Reproduction implies the existence of discontinuous beings, deduces Bataille. Each human being is distinct from another. Likewise, the products of reproduction are distinct from their parents. He asserts that reproduction gives rise to discontinuous beings, while death gives rise to continuity of beings. He demonstrates this by first examining the asexual reproduction of cellular organisms before looking at sexual reproduction in animals, hence covering the entire spectrum of living things including plants. In asexual reproduction through cell division, two new cells result from the division of the original parent cell. The new cells are distinct from their parent, and with their coming into existence, the first being has disappeared. There is a discontinuity between the parent and its offspring. However, at the point of cell division, there is an instant of continuity between the original cell and the two new cells. In sexual reproduction, reproduction is independent of the death and disappearance of the parent. However, at the level of the sperm and ovum, the fusion between the two can be understood as the death and disappearance of the two to create a new and previously non-existent zygote. That moment is the moment of continuity between the previous cells, now gone, and the new. Bataille suggests that we yearn for this continuity which is lost after the moment of the death of the original and the birth of the new and now discontinuous being. We have a nostalgia for a primal continuity linking us with everything that is. It is this nostalgia that causes eroticism in human beings. He divides eroticism into three types: physical, emotional, and religious eroticism. My aim is to show that with all of them, the concern is to substitute for the individual isolated discontinuity a feeling of profound continuity, he writes. Such a desire for continuity strikes me as similar to the common notion that even after death, we continue to live on through our descendants. Even if it is not life in the regular sense, that is, to be conscious and have experiences, we will be somewhat linked to the continuation of existence. Physical eroticism. Bataille draws a link between eroticism and violence. He writes, in essence, the domain of eroticism is the domain of violence, of violation. At the cellular level, we might not feel there is much violence because we view such microorganisms at a great distance instead of considering them to possess inside existence. Death, however, is the ultimate violence, and for new cells to come into existence, the parent cell has to die. This death, this violence is what brings about the change. In the sex act, there is a partial dissolution of the participants in their fusion of bodies. The whole business of eroticism is to destroy the self-contained characters of the participators as they are in their normal lives, he writes. He asks, what does physical eroticism signify if not a violation of the very being of its practitioners, a violation bordering on death, bordering on murder? Stripping naked during sex is the decisive action, according to Bataille. When we remove our clothing, we are telling the other of our desire for fusion, for continuance of being, beyond the confines of the self, in contrast to our sense of self-possession when clothed. A feeling of obscenity arises because of the uneasiness we feel when we give up our self-possession. When we strip naked in front of another person, we are revealing ourselves without our usual embellishment of clothing. As the saying goes, clothes make the man, and so when we remove our clothes, we are showing the other person what we really look like. We feel vulnerable in our nakedness since we are usually clothed, which creates an uneasiness both for the stripper as for the viewer. Bataille has already linked eroticism to death, and he intends to link it also to killing and religious sacrifice. He thinks that if the violent violation element is removed from erotic acts, it reduces the climax of the act. But when taken to the extreme of murder as depicted in Marquis de Saude's novels, it will be going too far. The excesses of eroticism, when taken to the extreme, remind us of death. Eroticism always entails a breaking down of established patterns of the regulated social order basic to our discontinuous mode of existence as defined and separate individuals. However, it is not to completely destroy this existence but to disturb it. What we desire is to bring into a world founded on discontinuity all the continuity such a world can sustain, and not more. Emotional eroticism. There however remains a selfish and cynical aspect of physical eroticism, where each participant is interested to satisfy their own urges. Emotional eroticism on the other hand stabilizes the physical side of eroticism through the reciprocal affection of the lovers. For the man in love, the fervor of love may be felt more violently than physical desire, says Bataille. While love promises bliss, its beginnings tend to be of turmoil and distress. Before happiness is felt, there may be suffering. Bataille puts this distress down to the poor odds of people finding love, leading to an anguish of desire. Suffering is what reveals the total significance of the beloved object, he writes. The urge to possess is linked with the idea of death, since unrequited love may lead to one to murder or suicide rather than to lose their beloved. There is an aura of death. Bataille writes, only the beloved can in this world bring about what our human limitations deny, a total blending of two beings, a continuity between two discontinuous creatures. The threat of separation and the inability to find love bring suffering, while for those lucky enough to found their beloved, it feels as if the truth of existence has been revealed. Religious eroticism. Not wanting to leave the quest for continuity to the fortunes of finding love, mankind has devised other ways, such as religious eroticism. While Bataille will elaborate in his book The Sacramental Character of all three types of eroticism, he explains that what he means by religious eroticism is the quest for continuity of existence systematically pursued beyond the immediate world, which signifies an essentially religious intention, the idea of transcendence in this life and after it. He clarifies that by religious eroticism, he is not referring to the idea of seeking after God's love, since such an idea is not present in religions that do not have a personal God such as Buddhism. Instead, religious eroticism is seeking to be connected to the transcendent. An example of an activity of religious eroticism is human sacrifice. During the rites, the victim dies and the spectators share in what his death reveals, explains Bataille. What is revealed is continuity through the death of a discontinuous being to those who watch it as a solemn rite. People die, and with death, their individual existence is discontinued, though existence in general continues on without them. It takes the violence of the sacrifice, the death of the sacrificial victim, to jolt the consciousness of the spectators, bringing to notice the continuity of all existence with which the victim is now one. The unintelligibility of continuity. Bataille believes that continuity is not something that is comprehensible intellectually, but is something that needs to be experienced. I want to explain what this means through an example often used to explain qualia. I can try to explain what the color red means, by talking about its wavelength and other scientific properties associated with it. I can illustrate the meaning of the color, like how red is the color of blood and of revolution. But for someone who has never seen the color red, my descriptions, no matter how detailed, how scientific or how poetic, will never be able to convey to that person what the color red feels like. To know the color red, one has to experience it. What Bataille is saying is that the continuity of existence is not something we can know simply by reading about it. In order to properly understand it, we have to experience it. Mysticism is precisely what cannot be intellectually explained. To understand it, it needs to be experienced. Indeed, mystical experience reveals an absence of any object, explains Bataille. Objects are identified with discontinuity, whereas mystical experience, as far as our strength allows us to break off our own discontinuity, confers on us a sense of continuity. While physical and emotional eroticism depends on our meeting with the right person to be our beloved in the right settings, religious eroticism through mystical experience requires only that the subject shall not be disturbed. Bataille looks at some conditions conducive to mystical experiences. Old age is one, since death looms, making one more open to experiencing a deeper reality. Some religions advocate asceticism as a rejection of life up to the point of death. However, Bataille is proposing another way to access continuity, which takes the opposite path, by assenting to life and in that way challenging death. That way is through eroticism, which can also bring about spiritual transcendent experiences. Thank you. This is the first time I used a text-to-voice software to read my essays. Do you think it is an improvement over my voice? Please let me know what you think in the comments. If you wish to support the Philosophical Bachelor, you can do so at worldwideweb.patreon.com/philosophicalbachelor.